A living dinosaur lurking in the remotest parts of Australia, a giant kangaroo that once existed alongside humans, and one of the most dangerous snakes in the world. These are unbelievable animal anomalies discovered in the Australian outback that scientists cannot ignore. Burrunjor is an Australian dinosaur-like cryptid, said to be about 20 to 25 feet long, bipedal, with small clawed hands. Cattle ranchers in the 50s started reporting seeing giant footprints and noticed their livestock was being eaten by something large. There have always been stories of the creature. Older Aboriginal accounts say the creature was a reptilian, maybe even feathered, and that it hunted large animals like kangaroos. The last reported sighting was in 1985, when a family traveling near Roper River claimed they saw a 20-foot-long creature covered in feathers. One of the wildest stories, though, comes from 1978, when a man named Brian Clark got lost in the woods. Police and Aboriginal bushmen searched for him for days, and one night, out in the woods, they woke up to the sound of something large thunderously stomping, shaking the ground. Soon after, they found the man and told him if he ever ventured out and got lost again, they would not be coming to look for him. The idea of a kangaroo the size of a small house sounds like a myth, but giant roos really did exist, and humans lived alongside them. Fossils of these giant kangaroos have been uncovered in the outback, with one of the biggest ever discovered at a site in central Queensland. This giant kangaroo is estimated to have stood about 2.5 meters, or just over 8 feet tall, and weighed around 605 pounds. This wasn't the only giant creature found at the site. Researchers also found the remains of giant wombats, car-sized lizards, and massive crocodiles. Next up is the eastern brown snake. Unlike some creatures on this list, this thing 100% does exist, and it is very much alive and well today. Don't be fooled by the mundane-sounding name. This snake is one of the deadliest creatures in Australia. Just 1/14,000th of an ounce of its venom is enough to kill an adult human. These snakes are fast, aggressive, and known for their terrible temper. In fact, eastern brown snakes, along with other brown species, are responsible for more deaths in Australia each year than any other group of snakes. They've been known to chase after threats and strike repeatedly. Even the young ones can kill an adult human. Their venom is the second most toxic of any land snake in the world, based on tests on mice. Eastern brown snakes are common too, often found on farms where they hunt mice. If one feels threatened, it'll raise its body off the ground and make an S shape with its mouth wide open. They respond to movement, so if you do come across one in the wild, best to stay as still as possible till it hopefully decides to leave you alone. The Yowie is kind of like Australia's version of Bigfoot. It's known by different names depending on the region, but it's usually described as a massive, hairy, bipedal creature that can stand anywhere from 7 to 12 feet tall. The first accounts of it go way back to the 1850s, where reports of indigenous apes started popping up in the Australian Town and Country Journal. In 1876, a reader asked about something called the Yahoo Devil, or Hairy Man of the Wood, referring to a creature that was said to stalk the forests. In 1882, an amateur naturalist named Henry James McCooey claimed to have seen one of these strange creatures along the New South Wales coast. He said it was around 5 feet tall, covered in long black hair, and when he threw a stone at it, the creature bolted. Sightings continued into the 20th century, especially in the Springbok region of Queensland. Former Queensland Senator Bill O'Chee even reported spotting a Yowie in 1977 during a school trip, describing it as over 3 meters tall and looking like Chewbacca from Star Wars. And of course, you have tons of videos online of supposed Yowie footage. A team of researchers with scientists from the University of Adelaide, the South Australian Museum, and the Western Australian Museum in Perth has been digging into small underground cavities beneath the outback. So far, they've found over 1,000 new species and actually think that there could be a lot more. When the discovery was first made, we didn't really believe it, said Andy Austin, a biology professor at the University of Adelaide. We thought maybe it was unique to just 3 or 4 locations. But it turns out these tiny creatures like small crustaceans, spiders, beetles, and worms are showing up in nearly every borehole they explore. Years ago, scientists knew that small creatures living underground were common in wetter regions in Europe. Australia, though, used to be much wetter and more like a rainforest before it dried out around 15 million years ago. Some of those aquatic creatures moved underground to escape the harsh conditions above, and today the surface is mostly home to more recent land animals. wasn't until about 15 years ago when Bill Humphreys from the Western Australia Museum discovered these underground critters that the team's research really kicked off. With DNA barcoding technology, they've been able to speed up identifying these creatures by examining their genetic material, which is obviously a lot more accurate than just looking at their size or color. The Bunyip is one of the creepiest creatures in Australian folklore, said to lurk in swamps and rivers. Descriptions of the creature are really all over the place. Some say it has a dog-like face with a horse-like tail, flippers tusks, a duckbill. There's even a story that describes it as a snake with a beard. The one thing everyone agrees on, though, is that it's an aquatic creature. The first mention of the Bunyip was in 1818 when explorers James Meehan and Hamilton Hume came across some large bones near Lake Bathurst in New South Wales. They said the remains looked a lot like a manatee or a hippopotamus. Then in the 1830s, some fossilized bones were found in the Wellington Caves. The bones later identified by British anatomist Sir Richard Owen as belonging to some type of giant marsupial. But it wasn't until 1845 that the term Bunyip was officially used. That same year, a skull found by a river was shown off in the Australian Museum as proof of this so-called Bunyip creature, but some experts later said that it was probably just the skull of a deformed fowl. Then in 1857, a guy named Edwin Stockwell made drawings of the Bunyip, describing it as a big freshwater seal with a dog's head and a long neck like a swan. He claimed he saw 6 of them, with the biggest one reaching over 15 feet long. But even with all these sightings and stories, no one's ever been able to prove the Bunyip's existence. The Yara-ma-yha-who is a creepy vampiric creature out of southeastern Australian Aboriginal mythology. There are different descriptions of the creatures, but they're usually said to look like little frog people with huge heads, no teeth, and suckers on their hands and feet. This strange creature supposedly hangs out in fig trees, where they wait for unsuspecting travelers to take a nap underneath or just pass by. Once the victim settles in, the Outback vampire drops down, uses its suckers to drain their BLOOD, and then swallows them whole. After a quick drink of water, it takes a nap. When it wakes up, it spits the victim out. Only now, they're shorter and have a reddish tint to their skin. If this happens enough times, the victim is said to turn into a Yara-ma-yha-who themselves. The legend says the creature only comes out during the day and targets living creatures. There's a trick that's supposed to help you survive, though. If you play dead until sunset, the creature supposedly just leaves you alone. The story was often told to misbehaving youngsters to keep them in line. Some believe the legend may have been inspired by tarsiers that were possibly brought to Australia by Malay settlers, and that could make sense. I can see a tarsier being described as a little reddish frog person, sorta. The Otways Panther is a big topic of debate in Australia. For years, people have been talking about big wild cats like panthers or pumas roaming around the bush, especially in the Otways region of Victoria. Well, in 2020, a photographer named Amber Nosida was out shooting birds when she saw something strange. At first, she thought it was a black wallaby, but when she got a better look through her camera, she realized, quote, "That's the biggest cat I've ever seen." She snapped a few pics, posted them online, and soon everyone was talking about whether it was the elusive Otways Panther or just a really big feral cat. David Waldron, a historian from Federation University, has dug into the big cat stories, tracing them all the way back to the 1830s. Some people thought Chinese miners brought tigers over, or that cats escaped from circuses. There's been a few wild cats found over the years, but no one's ever found evidence of an actual breeding population. What do you think of these photos, though? Is that a big cat or a house cat? So I had to add one for all the arachnophobes out there. The Redback Spider, often called the Australian Black Widow, looks pretty similar to the Black Widow with its black body and red mark on the back, especially on the females. These spiders pack a punch when it comes to their venom. It's a mix of neurotoxins that can cause serious pain in humans. Luckily, they don't usually bite with their full venom load, saving most of it for catching prey. But if they were to use all their venom, it could be fatal. But that said, since the anti-venom was created in 1956, no one has died from a redback bite. Before that, it was a real threat though, and a bite could kill a person if they didn't get treated in time. Symptoms of a bite include nausea, sweating near the bite, muscle weakness, and vomiting. Here's a freaky story. One guy got bitten while sitting on the toilet. Not much of a story, but scary all the same. Use your imagination. The Megalania prisca was a massive reptile that roamed Australia at one point, and some people think it might still be out there today. Picture a giant monitor lizard. This thing could grow up to 9 meters or 30 feet long. It's believed they once roamed through rainforests and deserts. There are stories about these huge lizards, both from modern sightings and Aboriginal oral history. Some stories talk about the Prenti, said to be a type of monitor lizard, with tales describing how its deadly stare could kill. In 1899, a report said one killed a horse near a camp, and when 3 men went to check it out, 2 of them were bitten by particularly large lizards. The bites were said to be toxic, similar to a Komodo dragon's. The Megalania may not be gone. In 1978, there was a sighting near a town in South Wales. A farmer reported seeing a lizard about 36 feet long eating a cow. The creature was so big that it supposedly stood about 9 feet tall on all fours, judging by the fence next to it. With all that said, I've been your host, James. I will catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.